The rain fell hard that night over a lonely gas station on Route 49. The fluorescent lights flickered like tired eyes, and under that pale blue glow stood a young black woman, clutching 8 wrinkled dollars in her hand, her daughter's breakfast money for tomorrow. Her name was Sienna Clark, 32. Single mother, 2 jobs. A woman who'd learned how to stretch every coin, every smile, every ounce of strength. Most nights, the world passed by without noticing her. But on this night, the world would notice. Because in the corner of that empty parking lot, a massive man in a leather vest collapsed beside his motorcycle, gasping for air, clutching his chest. "Don't get involved," the cashier shouted from the doorway. "Those bikers are trouble." The words hung in the air like a warning or maybe a test. And for a moment, Sienna froze. She thought of her daughter asleep at home, of the bills waiting on the kitchen table, of all the times life punished her for doing the right thing. Rain swept across the cracked pavement of the old gas station, painting the world in streaks of gray and gold. Sienna Clark stood under the flickering neon sign, her coat soaked through, 8 crumpled dollars pressed tightly in her hand. It was all she had left her daughter's breakfast money, the last bit of security between them and hunger. The hum of the vending machine, the buzz of the overhead light, and the pounding in her chest were the only sounds she could hear until the engine roar broke the silence. A motorcycle pulled in fast, chrome glinting under the rain, a towering man dismounting with a grunt. His leather vest read Hell's Angels, the skull patch glaring white against the dark. He leaned against the bike, then suddenly collapsed. His body hit the ground hard, the echo cutting through the storm like thunder. Sienna froze. Her eyes darted to the convenience store window where the cashier, a white man in his 30s, stood watching with a cigarette in his mouth. "Don't get involved," he called out through the open door. "Those guys bring nothing but trouble." She looked down at the biker gray face, hand clutching his chest, and felt her pulse quicken. "Please," she said, "call 911. The man shrugged, took another drag. "Not my problem. Lady, if you're smart, you'll walk away." He's probably high on something. From the corner of the lot, an older white trucker walked up, shaking his head. "Miss, leave him be. You got that look of mom just trying to survive. Don't let one of them ruin your life." Them. The word burned in her ears. It was always them or us, always divided by something: color, class, fear. She thought of her daughter Maya asleep at home, of her grandmother who died waiting for help that never came because people were afraid of the neighborhood she collapsed in. Fear, dressed as caution, had taken too many lives. "He's not breathing," Sienna said, kneeling down. "Someone has to help him." The cashier rolled his eyes, flicked his cigarette into the rain. "Suit yourself, but don't come crying when his buddies show up." Sienna's fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone, 1 bar of signal, 10% battery. The 911 call dropped halfway through. She swore under her breath, dashed into the store, grabbed a bottle of water and a pack of aspirin from the shelf, and slapped her last $8 on the counter. The cashier stared at her like she was insane. "You're really wasting your money on him?" She didn't answer. She ran back outside, knelt beside the man again. "Hey, sir, stay with me." His lips were blue now, his breathing shallow. She opened the water, placed 2 tablets on his tongue, and whispered, "Chew, please." The rain came down harder. Her knees sank into the puddle, soaking her jeans. The trucker had already driven off. The cashier had gone back inside. The parking lot was empty except for a dying man and a woman the world never saw until it needed her pain. For a moment, she felt utterly alone, and then, faintly, the sound of sirens. Relief flooded her chest. She pressed her hand over his heart, feeling for movement, and thought, "Please, just hold on." When the ambulance arrived, the paramedics jumped out, their flashlights slicing through the rain. "You gave him aspirin?" one asked. She nodded. "Good," he said, checking the man's pulse. "You probably saved his life." She exhaled, shaking as they lifted him onto the stretcher. One of the medics looked back at her. "You should go home, ma'am. You did your part." But before she could stand, a second motorcycle roared into the lot. A younger man with a tattooed neck and the same skull insignia jumped off, panic in his eyes. "Hawk! Oh God, Hawk!" He turned to Sienna, his voice breaking. "You helped him?" She nodded silently. He looked at her like she'd done something impossible. "Nobody ever helps us," he said. "Not when they see the patch." That sentence hit her harder than the rain. Not when they see the patch. For her, it was not when they see the skin. The weight of shared prejudice pressed between them, two strangers bound by a lifetime of being judged before being known. The younger man took her trembling hand. "He's gonna want to thank you," he said softly. "You don't know who you just saved." He slipped a small white card into her palm, a crown with wings embossed in gold. "Call this number tomorrow." As the ambulance pulled away, the gas station lights flickered again, buzzing in the storm. The younger biker looked at her with a mix of awe and sorrow. "You're a good person, Sienna Clark. Don't let anyone tell you different." Then he was gone, the sound of his engine fading into the distance. Sienna stood alone in the rain, her breath fogging in the cold air, clutching the card in one hand and $1.50 in the other. Behind the glass, the cashier watched her. He muttered something she couldn't hear, but could read on his lips. Stupid woman. She walked away anyway. 2 miles in the dark, shoes soaked, clothes heavy, heart heavier. Every step echoed the same thought: how quick the world is to decide who's worth saving. That night, she didn't know that someone had filmed her a grainy clip of a black woman kneeling over a white biker in the rain. By morning, that clip would explode across social media, and the world would split in two: those who saw her kindness and those who saw her color. And that's where her real fight would begin. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through Sienna's window, catching on the cracked glass and peeling paint. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that man's face gray, gasping, fading, and the cold stares of those who told her to walk away. Maya's laughter from the kitchen snapped her back. "Mommy, look, I made cereal all by myself." The little girl grinned, proud, holding a bowl of dry flakes and the last splash of milk. Sienna smiled through exhaustion. "That's perfect, baby." But as she sat down, her phone buzzed. Notifications. Dozens, then hundreds. She frowned, clicked one, and her heart dropped. A video, posted by someone at the gas station. Title: "Black Woman Found with Hell's Angels, Member Late Night Incident." The video showed her kneeling in the rain beside the biker, hands trembling, pleading for help. But the comments tore her open. Typical pretending to help to steal his wallet. Probably staged. They always play the victim. Where's CPS? That woman has a kid and she's out at midnight. She's touching a Hell's Angel? Bet she's part of some gang. Every line was a wound. Not one person asked if the man survived. They just saw her skin and decided her story. Sienna's hands shook. Her coworker Linda called within minutes. "Honey, don't read it. It's garbage. People love to hate." But the words had already rooted deep. Her phone rang again, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Clark?" "Yes?" "This is Cole. You saved my brother last night, Hawk. He's alive, stable, and he's asking for you." Sienna's breath caught. He's okay?" "He will be. But listen, you're going to see a lot of things online. People don't understand him, or us. Please meet me at Murphy's Diner at 3. Hawk wants to talk to you." Before she could answer, a loud knock shook the door. Her neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Sienna, baby, I saw the news. You need to be careful who you mix with. Those men are dangerous." "He was dying, Mrs. Johnson. What was I supposed to do?" Mrs. Johnson sighed. "You think they'll thank you? No, honey. When a black woman touches a white man, especially one of them, people don't see kindness. They see scandal. They'll twist it till it looks ugly." Sienna wanted to argue, but deep down, she knew her neighbor wasn't wrong. She'd seen how quickly compassion turned into accusation, how her people were punished, not for doing wrong, but for daring to act human in the wrong place. At work, whispers followed her. The laundromat TV played the news segment. Breaking story. Local woman aids biker gang member in cardiac arrest. Authorities investigating potential gang involvement. The words gang involvement hung like a noose around her name. Customers eyed her as if she were radioactive. One woman actually moved her clothes from Sienna's station and muttered, "I don't want trouble." By lunchtime, her manager called her into the back office. "Sienna, you know we like you here, but this situation, it's making people uncomfortable." "What situation?" "I saved a man's life." "I know, but the company has to think about image. Maybe take a few days off. Let things cool down." Image. The word stung more than any insult online. She packed her things quietly, went outside, and sat on the curb, staring at her reflection in the puddle. The woman looking back at her didn't look dangerous. She just looked tired. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number. A voicemail. She pressed play. "This message is for Miss Sienna Clark. You don't know me, but I saw what you did last night. My father's a Hell's Angel. Most people think we're monsters. But kindness doesn't choose sides. Don't let them break you." She blinked away tears. For the first time that day, someone saw her, not just the headlines. At exactly 3 p.m., she took the bus to Murphy's Diner. Every eye followed her as she stepped inside. The room was full of leather vests and tattoos, but instead of hostility, there was silence, heavy, respectful silence. Cole rose from the booth, his face tired but kind. "Sienna, thank you for coming." As she walked past the tables, one by one, the bikers stood. A wave of movement, like soldiers saluting. Her breath caught in her throat. Cole led her to a corner booth. Hawk was there, pale but alive, oxygen tube at his nose. His eyes met hers. "You're the woman from last night?" "Yes, sir." He smiled weakly. "You gave me back my life." Sienna shook her head. "I just did what anyone should have done." He reached across the table, hand trembling. "Then the world needs more people like you." Cole slid an envelope toward her. Inside was a check, $25,000. "I can't take this," she whispered. "It's not charity," Cole said softly. "It's acknowledgement. You saved a man everyone else had already condemned." Outside the diner window, a group of reporters gathered. Sienna's name had become a headline, a debate. Was she brave or reckless? Should a single mother risk her life for a criminal? One reporter shouted through the glass, "Miss Clark, do you feel safe around those men?" Sienna turned to them calmly, the tremor gone from her voice. "I feel safer around people who don't see color when someone's dying." For a moment, the room went still. Hawk smiled. Cole looked down, fighting emotion. And Sienna finally understood sometimes the loudest fight against prejudice isn't in shouting back, it's in refusing to let hate define who you are. As she left the diner, the cameras flashed, voices called her name, but Sienna just walked into the sunlight, clutching that card with the crown and wings. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the real storm hadn't even begun yet. By dawn, the sky above Maplewood Street was bruised, purple and gold, the kind of morning that usually promised calm, but not that day. Sienna woke to the low hum of engines, one, then two, then dozens, the sound growing like thunder rolling closer. She hurried to the window, her heart hammering. What she saw made her breath catch. The entire street was lined with motorcycles, rows of chrome gleaming under the pale sun, black leather jackets marked with skulls and wings. Hell's Angels, 100 of them, maybe more, parked in perfect formation outside her apartment building. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Local news alert, neighbors texting, police dispatch notifications. She froze, gripping the curtain. Dear God. Maya came running, still in pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, what's that sound?" Sienna knelt beside her, forcing calm into her voice. "It's okay, baby. Just stay inside." But her own hands were shaking. From across the street, Mrs. Johnson peeked out, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, officer. They're right outside our homes. A whole gang of them. Hurry." Doors slammed, blinds snapped shut. Voices rose in panic. Minutes later, Mr. Rodriguez stormed out of his house, face red. "Sienna, what did you do? You brought them here?" She stepped outside, shielding Maya behind her. "I didn't bring anyone. They just showed up." "Just showed up?" he shouted. "We've got kids here. You think we want a bunch of criminals on our street?" "They're not criminals," Sienna said quietly. "They're people." "People?" Mrs. Johnson scoffed from her porch. "Honey, look around. You think anyone dressed like that came here for a bake sale?" Before Sienna could reply, the roar of an engine silenced everyone. A large truck turned the corner, a trailer with the same logo, a crown with wings. It stopped right in front of her building. The doors opened, and out stepped Cole, the biker who'd given her the card. He raised both hands in peace. "We're not here for trouble," he said, voice calm but carrying authority. "We're here to thank someone," the crowd murmured, suspicious and restless. 2 police cars screeched in, lights flashing. Officers stepped out, hands near their holsters. "Sir, you can't gather like this without a permit." Cole handed one officer a document. "We've got one, filed yesterday. We're a registered nonprofit, Lily's Legacy." The officer looked at the paper, frowned, then nodded reluctantly. "Keep it peaceful." Cole turned back to the crowd. We intend to. He scanned the faces, then found Sienna. Miss Clark, he called softly. Would you come here? Every eye turned. She hesitated, feeling the weight of judgment pressing on her. Maya clung to her hand. It's okay, baby, she whispered. Stay with Mrs. Johnson. But Mrs. Johnson shook her head. Don't you dare go near them, Sienna. Don't make this worse. Sienna looked between her frightened neighbors and the men waiting by their bikes. She thought about how they'd all looked at her the same way the night before, as if kindness were a mistake. And then she stepped forward. Slowly, quietly, she walked through the rows of motorcycles, her shoes splashing in last night's puddles. The bikers stood still, nodding slightly as she passed. For once, there was no noise, just the sound of rain dripping from metal and breath held in waiting. When she reached Cole, he smiled. He's awake, he said softly. Hawk wants to see you. The trailer doors opened. Hawk stood there, leaning on a cane, color back in his face. You remember me? He asked with a grin. Sienna nodded. You scared me half to death. You saved me, he said, and that's why we're here. He gestured to the crowd. These men you see, they're my family. But the world doesn't see that. They see criminals, thugs, outlaws. Same way they see you as a problem before they ever see a person. His voice carried across the street. When I went down last night, no one came. They saw the vest and they judged. But she didn't. She knelt beside me. She saw a man, not a monster. And now, we're here to return that humanity. Hawk motioned to the truck. The bikers opened it, revealing crates stacked high groceries, furniture, toys, school supplies. Murmurs spread through the crowd. What is this? Someone asked. Lily's Legacy, Cole explained. A nonprofit we built in memory of Hawk's daughter. We help families in need, any race, any background, no exceptions. Still, suspicion lingered. A man near the curb scoffed. Yeah, right. A biker charity? Hawk reached into his vest, pulled out a photograph, a little girl with bright eyes and a hospital wristband. This is Lily, he said. She died at 7 because we couldn't afford her treatment in time. I swore no one else would go through that. Every dollar we earn goes into helping someone survive. His voice cracked. And when you save one of us, you save every life we've promised to protect. The silence was broken by Mr. Rodriguez's voice, softer now. Wait. You helped my cousin in Detroit, Miguel Rodriguez, PTSD veteran. That was your foundation? Cole nodded. We did, a woman down the block gasped. You paid for my son's heart surgery 2 years ago. One by one, voices rose, recognition spreading like fire through the crowd. Fear melted into understanding. Mrs. Johnson lowered her phone. Lord have mercy, she whispered. We judged them before we even listened. Hawk turned back to Sienna. You gave me a second chance, Miss Clark. Let me give you one. He handed her an envelope, a check, and a letterhead stamped Lily's Legacy. Her eyes widened as he said quietly, You've got a job with us now, full-time outreach coordinator. Benefits, health care for your daughter. You've earned it. Sienna covered her mouth, tears spilling down her face. The crowd that once feared her began to clap, hesitant at first, then strong, growing louder with every heartbeat. Cameras clicked, engines rumbled, voices cheered. The same street that had once whispered gang now echoed with something different, gratitude. And as Maya ran into her mother's arms, Hawk's words lingered in the morning air. The world saw your color. We saw your courage. That was the moment the neighborhood began to change, not because fear disappeared, but because one woman proved that compassion can be louder than prejudice. And for the first time in years, Sienna Clark felt like the world had finally seen her, truly seen her. For the first time in months, Sienna slept without fear of tomorrow. But peace, she learned, was fragile, especially when it dared to exist in a world still blinded by color. The morning after the biker's visit, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, the notifications felt like loved neighbors texting thank yous, old friends leaving heart emojis, strangers sending messages of hope. Then, as always, the tone shifted. News outlets had picked up the story, but they didn't tell it the way it happened. The headline on one channel read, Single black mother involved with notorious biker gang, helping or hiding something. Another one, Community shocked as X, con bikers swarm residential street. They didn't talk about Lily's legacy. They didn't talk about the groceries or the toys or the lives those bikers had rebuilt. They talked about her skin, about the danger of certain communities mixing, about how her reckless behavior had brought fear to an entire neighborhood. When she dropped Maya off at school, the stares began immediately. Mothers she'd waved to for years suddenly found other directions to look. A teacher she knew well smiled thinly and said, "We'll be monitoring Maya closely this week, just in case things escalate." "Escalate?" Sienna asked, her voice tight. "She's 6 years old." The teacher didn't answer. She just adjusted her clipboard and walked away. By the time Sienna reached the laundromat for her morning shift, she could feel the unease in the air. Linda, her coworker, met her at the door with a sympathetic look. "Girl, the boss said you can't be here today," she whispered. "Said the media circus might disrupt business." Sienna's throat closed. "He's letting me go?" Linda's eyes softened. "He said it's temporary, but you and I both know what that means." Sienna stepped outside, the noise of the dryers fading behind her, replaced by the dull hum of passing traffic. Across the street, two men in suits stood beside a camera crew. One of them recognized her immediately. "Miss Clark, Channel 7 News. Do you have any comments about the biker gang activity in your area?" She shook her head, but the man pressed closer. "How long have you been associated with Hell's Angels?" She stopped cold. "I'm not associated with anyone. I helped a man having a heart attack. That's it." "Then why?" the reporter said. "Did 100 of them show up at your door?" The camera's red light blinked. Every word she said now could be cut, twisted, weaponized. "Maybe," she said quietly, "because sometimes the people we fear most are the ones who still remember what gratitude means." That clip aired that evening, and it set off a storm. Online, her words were ripped apart. "She's defending criminals. That's what happens when you glorify gangs. She's making us all look bad." Some voices came from people who looked like her, and that hurt the most. "Why'd you have to make it about race?" one commenter wrote. "You're giving them more reason to fear us." Sienna shut off her phone. The noise was suffocating. Outside her window, a police cruiser slowed as it passed, headlights sweeping over her building. A chill ran down her spine. She remembered how quickly admiration could turn to suspicion, how a black woman could go from hero to threat overnight. That evening, Cole called. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said honestly. "They're tearing me apart." "Let them talk," he replied. "You know the truth." "Truth doesn't pay the rent," she said bitterly. "Truth doesn't stop them from whispering about my kid." There was a pause on the line. Then Cole said, "Then maybe it's time the truth had a platform." The next morning, he picked her up on his motorcycle reluctantly. She climbed on, gripping the back of his jacket as they rode to the community center Lily's Legacy had just finished renovating downtown. Inside, the air buzzed with energy. Dozens of families, black, white, Latino, Asian, stood in line for food, clothing, and free medical screenings. Doctors in scrubs chatted with volunteers wearing vests embroidered with the crown and wings symbol. It was beautiful, organized chaos powered by kindness. "We do this every month," Cole said. "And every month, people assume it's a front for something illegal." At the far end of the room, a group of city councilmen stood stiffly, observing. One of them whispered something to another, and they both looked at Sienna. She caught the glance, half curiosity, half contempt. Cole noticed too. "They see what they want to see," he muttered. "That's the fight." Then Hawk appeared, leaning on his cane, smiling faintly. "You showed up," he said. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "The world's already calling me a fool." "Good," Hawk said. "It means you did something worth noticing." He motioned her toward a stage where microphones waited. "You want to change how they see us? Speak." Her palms were damp, but she stepped forward anyway. The murmurs quieted. Cameras rolled. "Yesterday," she began, "100 bikers came to my street. The world saw a gang. I saw gratitude. The truth is, I didn't save a criminal. I saved a man. But that's not what anyone wants to hear, is it? Because in America, what you see depends on the skin you're looking at." The room went still. She continued, her voice steady but full of heat. "When a white woman helps a stranger, she's an angel. When a black woman does it, she's a suspect. When a group of white men ride motorcycles, they're rebels. When black men gather, they're a threat. And we wonder why kindness feels dangerous." Her words rippled through the room like wind over glass. Hawk clapped first, then Cole, then the families. Cameras flashed. Outside, protesters chanted her name, some in praise, others in scorn, but for the first time, Sienna didn't care. She'd said what needed to be said. That night, the city's skyline glowed through her window, golden and endless. She held Maya close as her daughter slept and whispered, "Maybe one day, you'll grow up in a world where saving a life doesn't come with a label." She didn't know that tomorrow would bring a new storm, one fiercer, more personal, but for now, under the hum of the city lights, Sienna finally felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. By the third morning, peace was a luxury Sienna couldn't afford. The city had turned her into a headline, and now the headlines had turned into war. Her face was everywhere: newspapers, social media, talk shows. Hero or hypocrite, one network blared. Single black mother linked to outlaw bikers, another sneered. The footage from her speech at the community center had gone viral, but so had the hate. Overnight, someone had spray-painted the words, "gang lover," across her apartment door. Maya saw it first, standing there in her pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, what does it mean?" Sienna swallowed hard. "It means people are scared of what they don't understand, baby. Go get ready for school." But her voice trembled. She could hear Mrs. Johnson sweeping her porch across the street, pretending not to look, pretending she hadn't heard. When Sienna walked outside, a news van was parked at the curb. The reporter, the same man from Channel 7, rushed toward her, microphone extended. "Miss Clark, how do you respond to the allegations that you're receiving money from a criminal organization?" "Allegations?" she repeated, stunned. "You mean gratitude? Or is that too hard a story to sell?" He smirked. "There are documents circulating online showing funds transferred to your account. People are calling it payoff money." "That's my salary," she snapped. "I work for Lily's Legacy. It's a non-profit, not a gang." The reporter didn't blink. "And yet, your employer has a known criminal past. How can the public trust a woman who associates with convicted felons?" Sienna froze. Behind her, neighbors had started to gather. Phones lifted, recording. She looked straight into the camera and said, "The same way they trust politicians with records worse than his. The difference is, he chose to change." The reporter leaned in. "So you admit you're defending criminals?" "I'm defending redemption," she said, voice shaking with controlled fury. "Something you clearly don't believe in." The clip went live within minutes. By lunchtime, her inbox was flooded with messages. Some were kind. "Stay strong, sister." Others were poison. "We know where you live. Keep your kid away from ours. You think saving a biker makes you a saint?" Even at Maya's school, whispers followed. One parent demanded that the principal reconsider letting that woman's daughter stay. When Sienna picked Maya up that afternoon, the teacher avoided her eyes. "Maya had a good day," she said flatly. "But perhaps it would be best if she took a short break until things calm down." Sienna's chest tightened. "A short break? You're suspending her? She's 6. The teacher shrugged helplessly. "It's for her safety." That night, Sienna sat at the kitchen table, staring at the unpaid bills, the fading ink of threats on her door, and the letter from the school. The same community that had clapped for her 2 days ago now treated her like a contagion. Her phone rang. It was Cole. "Don't look at the news," he said immediately. "They're spinning it bad." "Too late," she muttered. "My daughter got suspended. My door got tagged. My neighbors think I'm some kind of traitor." Cole's tone hardened. "Meet me tomorrow. We're going to clear your name." The next day, he brought her to the downtown Civic Hall. Rows of microphones stood ready. Hawk was there, too, leaning on his cane, flanked by volunteers in their Lily's Legacy vests. The room was packed with reporters. "You sure about this?" Sienna whispered. Hawk smiled faintly. "They built their story on lies. Let's give them the truth." When the press conference began, Cole took the podium first. "Lily's Legacy," he said firmly, "has helped over 3,000 families, all documented, all audited, all legal. You've seen the receipts." He held up a binder thick with files. "We operate under full nonprofit transparency. The only reason we're being called criminals today is because of what we look like." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hawk stepped forward next, his deep voice commanding. "I did time. I won't hide that. But when my daughter died, I promised to make my life worth something again. And when Sienna Clark saved me, she didn't see a convict. She saw a human being. The problem is, the rest of you still can't." Cameras flashed. The tension in the room shifted from hostility to unease. Hawk continued. "We live in a world where a black woman's kindness becomes a conspiracy, and a white man's mistake becomes a story of redemption. Maybe that's the real crime. The journalists went quiet. Then one brave voice called out, "Miss Clark, how do you stay calm through all this?" Sienna stepped to the microphone. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. "Because I know who I am," she said. "And I know what I saw that night, a man dying while people argued about stereotypes. If I'd listened to fear, he'd be dead. And maybe that's what prejudice really wants, a world where compassion stays quiet." The silence afterward was heavy, then slowly gave way to clapping. One by one, reporters lowered their cameras. The next day, the footage spread online again, but this time, the tone was different. Hashtags changed. Number Sienna Clark trended with number kindness over fear. Thousands of people reposted the video with the same caption, "She saw a man, not a label." Still, the damage lingered. That night, her car windows were smashed, her mailbox stuffed with hate mail. But as she swept the glass from her doorstep, she noticed something else, a small card left under her mat, the crown with wings, and a single line handwritten in blue ink. "When they throw hate, build higher." She smiled faintly through her tears. The storm hadn't broken her. It had only revealed who still stood beside her. The next morning, the smell of gasoline lingered in the air. Sienna stood outside her apartment building, staring at the charred black streaks on the pavement. Someone had tried to set her car on fire during the night. The fire department had arrived in time, but the damage was done. The windows were cracked, the paint bubbled, and the word "liar" was scrawled in red spray paint across the hood. A crowd gathered nearby, whispering, filming, pretending to care. But no one came closer. Not even Mrs. Johnson. Sienna felt her chest tighten. She had become a stranger in her own neighborhood. Cole pulled up on his motorcycle, fury burning in his eyes. "Who did this?" he demanded. "Neighbors say they saw someone in a hoodie," Sienna said softly. "Police took a report, but they didn't promise much." She forced a laugh. "Guess they're too busy protecting people from me." Cole clenched his fists. "You shouldn't stay here. You and Maya come with us. We'll keep you safe." "Safe?" Sienna echoed. "If I leave, they'll say I'm hiding. If I stay, they'll say I'm provoking." She looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Tell me, Cole, how does a black woman prove she's innocent when the world has already decided she's guilty?" Cole didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a folder. Inside were photos, donation records, and a document stamped with the state seal. "These are our financials," he said. "Full transparency. We've got nothing to hide. Hawk wants to show them to the city council tonight. You should be there." That evening, the council chamber was overflowing. Protesters lined the steps outside, some waving signs that read, "Stop glorifying criminals," others holding "Justice for Sienna." Reporters filled every seat, cameras flashing like lightning. Inside, Sienna sat behind Hawk and Cole, trying to steady her breathing. The council chair, a gray-haired man in a Navy suit, called the meeting to order. "We are here to discuss allegations regarding the nonprofit Lily's Legacy and its association with gang activity." Cole rose first. "With respect, sir, these accusations are false. Our records are open to the public." He placed the folder on the table. "Every donation is verified, every expense accounted for." The chair frowned. "And yet, the public remains concerned. Miss Clark's presence has raised questions." Sienna stood before he could continue. "Questions about what?" she asked. "About the fact that a woman who looks like me works for men who look like them?" The room went silent. "If I were white, you'd call it compassion. But because I'm black, you call it corruption." Murmurs rippled through the audience. The chair's face tightened. "Miss Clark, this isn't about race." "Isn't it?" she replied. "The night I saved that man, no one saw courage. They saw color. And every headline since then has done the same." She gestured toward the cameras. "You can dress it up in fancy words, but prejudice doesn't die, it just learns new language." From the second row, a woman in a red blazer stood. "Miss Clark, what about the accusations that Lily's Legacy funnels money to biker chapters across the country?" Hawk slowly stood, cane in hand. "Lady, those chapters are food drives, housing projects, and medical clinics. You call them criminals because of their jackets, but you never looked at what's underneath." He turned toward the council. "The only crime here is assuming redemption isn't possible." The tension broke when a man from the back shouted, "Liar! You can't erase your past!" The room erupted, yelling, reporters shouting questions, security moving in. Cole tried to calm the crowd, but it was chaos. Then, from somewhere near the aisle, a voice rose above the noise. "My name is Rosa Delgado. Lily's legacy saved my daughter's life." The shouting paused. A Latina woman stepped forward, holding a photo of a little girl with a surgical scar on her chest. She was dying. "No insurance would touch us. These people paid for her surgery. If that's a crime, I hope they keep committing it." The council chamber fell silent. Rosa looked at Sienna and smiled through tears. "You saved my daughter's future when you saved Hawk's life." That kindness came full circle. Cameras zoomed in on her trembling hands. Even the chair cleared his throat awkwardly. "We appreciate your testimony," Hawk exhaled. "You see, gentlemen, kindness doesn't belong to any color, patch, or past. It belongs to whoever's brave enough to act when everyone else looks away." The session ended in uneasy quiet. Outside, the protest had split in two, half cheering, half booing. Sienna stepped onto the steps with Cole and Hawk. Reporters surged forward again, shouting her name, flashing lights in her face. One question pierced through the chaos. "Miss Clark, what do you say to those who still believe you're part of a dangerous movement?" She paused, took a deep breath, and said clearly, "Then they're right, because kindness is dangerous. It threatens hate. It exposes hypocrisy. It burns down the walls people hide behind." Her words hung in the night air. Cameras caught every syllable. Within hours, the clip went viral again, this time under a new hashtag, number dangerous kindness. It flooded social media, millions of views within a day. But as Sienna lay in bed that night, listening to Maya's soft breathing, she knew this wasn't the end. For every message of love, there would be another filled with hate. For every person she changed, there would be someone determined to destroy her. The question wasn't whether she could survive it, it was whether she could keep believing in the good she'd started. And somewhere outside, beneath the hum of the city lights, a shadow watched her apartment from across the street. The storm, it seemed, was far from over. The morning after the council hearing, Sienna woke to a world divided in half. On one side, supporters flooded her inbox with words of hope. On the other, hate poured in like acid. Sellout. Gang trash. Pretending to be a hero. Some messages came from anonymous accounts, others from people who used to call her friend. But one message was different. It came from a private email address. Subject line, "We're not done yet." The body contained only one sentence. "If you don't stop talking, we'll silence you for good." Sienna stared at it, her breath shallow. She wanted to believe it was an empty threat, just another coward hiding behind a screen. But as the hours passed, the unease grew heavier. That afternoon, she noticed a dark SUV parked near her building engine running, windows tinted. It was still there when she walked Maya to school, still there when she came home, and again when the sun went down. Cole insisted on staying the night outside her apartment. "You're not alone," he said, arms crossed, standing watch near the stairwell. But even his presence couldn't drown out the fear gnawing at her chest. "What if this gets worse?" she whispered. "What if they come after Maya?" Cole's eyes softened. "Then they'll answer to us. You've got a family now, Sienna. We don't abandon our own." The next day, the story took a darker turn. A new video surfaced online, grainy security footage from the night at the gas station. But this time, the clip had been edited. The moment where Sienna handed the biker the aspirin had been slowed down, cut, and captioned, "Unknown substance given to biker before collapse." The implication was poison. Within hours, conspiracy channels picked it up. Hashtags like #Angel Setup and #Clark Lies began trending. People demanded her arrest. "She staged the rescue," one talk show host declared. "All for fame." Another said, maybe this was part of a bigger planned sympathy for criminals. By afternoon, 2 detectives arrived at her apartment. One white, one black, both wearing suits that looked too clean for the mess they were about to enter. "Miss Clark," the taller one said, "we'd like to ask you a few questions." Maya clutched her mother's hand. "Is Mommy in trouble?" "No, sweetie," Sienna said quickly, forcing a smile. "They just want to talk." Inside, the detectives laid out their questions. Where did she get the aspirin? Had she known Hawk before that night? Had she taken money from him before the donation? Every question dripped with suspicion. "I bought it at the gas station," she said. "You can check the receipt." "We did," the black detective said quietly. "There's no record of that purchase." "That's impossible," she said, voice rising. "The cashier rang it up." The taller one leaned back. The cashier claims you grabbed the items and ran. That's a lie, she whispered. He refused to help. He didn't even call 911. The detectives exchanged glances. We'll be in touch. When they left, Sienna sank into the couch, head in her hands. It was happening again, the erasure of truth, the rewriting of her story to fit a narrative the world wanted to believe. That evening, Hawk showed up at her door with a folder. "We're fighting back," he said. Inside were legal documents, proof of donations, timestamps, medical reports from the night he was admitted. "You didn't poison me," he said firmly. "You saved me, and we're going to make them say it out loud." The next day, Hawk arranged a live interview with a national network. Sienna didn't want to go, she hated cameras now, but he convinced her. "They took your voice," he said. "Take it back." The studio was cold and bright, the lights harsh on her tired eyes. Across from her sat a polished anchorwoman in a crimson blazer. "Miss Clark," she began smoothly, "you've been accused of faking an act of kindness for money and attention. What do you say to those who believe this was all staged?" Sienna paused, choosing her words. "I say kindness doesn't need an audience. If I wanted fame, I wouldn't have spent my last $8 in the rain." The anchor arched a brow. "So you deny any connection to the Hells Angels?" Sienna's jaw tightened. "I don't work for gangs. I work for redemption." The anchor smiled thinly. "Redemption is a noble word, Miss Clark, but it doesn't erase history." "No," Sienna said softly. "It doesn't, but neither does hate." Hawk stepped onto the stage, surprising everyone. "If you want the truth," he said, voice deep and steady, "you're looking at it. I was dead on that pavement. She brought me back. You think she needed my money? She didn't even want it. You think she staged this? Then explain the paramedics' report that says she saved my life." He handed the anchor a document. Camera zoomed in. Hawk turned to Sienna. "The world keeps trying to make your kindness a crime. But I've seen real crimes, and they don't look like you." By the time the interview aired that evening, public opinion had begun to shift again. The hashtag number Clark Lies was buried under a new one. Number Clark Saved Lives. People started sharing stories of their own times they'd helped strangers and been doubted, times they'd been misjudged for the color of their skin. The movement was growing beyond her. But as Sienna sat on her couch that night, Maya asleep in her lap, the phone buzzed again. Another message. No subject line this time. Just 4 words. "You don't belong here." She looked out the window. The SUV was back. The engine was off this time, but she could feel it. Someone was still watching. The battle for her truth wasn't over. It was only beginning. Rain returned that night, relentless and cold, drumming against Sienna's window like a warning. She couldn't sleep. The SUV was gone now, but the fear remained, sitting heavy in her chest. Hawk had insisted on sending 2 volunteers to watch her building, but she still felt exposed. Every creak in the hallway made her jump. Every car passing outside sounded like a threat rolling closer. When morning came, her exhaustion had turned into something sharper, a quiet, burning anger. She'd done everything right, told the truth again and again, and somehow she was still the villain. At the Lily's Legacy headquarters downtown, reporters hovered near the entrance like vultures. Sienna slipped past them, hood pulled low. Inside, the office hummed with tension. Cole was already there, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. Hawk sat by the window, eyes shadowed with fatigue. "There's something you need to see," he said. He turned his laptop toward her. On the screen was an article from the Chronicle. Exclusive. Lily's Legacy misused donor funds. Whistleblower reveals fraud. Sienna's stomach dropped. "What?" Hawk clicked on the photo attached to the story. It was her photo, her name in bold under the headline. The article accused her of siphoning donations into a personal account, using the foundation as a front for luxury spending and political activism. "This is insane," she said, voice trembling. "They're lying. You know they're lying." Hawk's expression was grim. "I know, but they've got documents, Sienna. Bank statements, emails, receipts." Cole slammed his fist on the desk. "Forged, all of it. Somebody planted this." Within hours, the internet had exploded. Number Sienna scam trended nationwide. Anonymous trolls posted doctored screenshots of supposed transactions, flights, hotels, jewelry. Even her old coworkers at the laundromat began whispering, "She always looked too calm to be broke. Guess she played us all." The betrayal cut deeper than hate ever had. She'd learned to survive racism. She'd learned to survive fear. But betrayal that came from the inside, from people who'd once believed in her. Hawk called an emergency meeting. Volunteers crowded the room, faces tense and pale. "We've been compromised," he said. "Someone inside leaked information." Eyes darted around. Sienna felt them all land on her. "Don't look at her like that," Cole snapped. "You know damn well she's being framed." A young volunteer, Maria, barely 20, stood up, tears in her eyes. "But the emails came from her address," she whispered. "How else could they have them?" Sienna's voice broke. "Because someone used it. They hacked me. She stopped. Hawk was staring at his phone. "It's worse than that," he said quietly. "The police are outside." Flashing lights filled the windows. Sienna's heart slammed against her ribs. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Cole moved fast, opening the back door. "Go. Now. If I run, I look guilty," she said. "If you stay, they'll make you guilty," Hawk growled. Before she could decide, the door burst open. 2 officers stepped in, one holding a warrant. "Sienna Clark, you're under investigation for financial fraud and misuse of charitable funds." Cameras clicked behind them. Someone had tipped off the media. They didn't handcuff her, but they didn't need to. The humiliation was enough. The crowd outside jeered as she was escorted to the car. "Guess the hero got caught," one voice shouted. "Told you she was fake." Another laughed. At the station, the interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and fluorescent heat. The same detective from before the white one leaned across the table. "You sure have a talent for finding trouble, Miss Clark." "Or trouble just has a talent for finding me," she said quietly. He slid a folder across the table. "We've got digital transfers from Lily's legacy accounts to one under your name. Care to explain?" She scanned the papers, her heart racing. The account number was close to hers, 1 digit off. "This isn't mine," she said. "Somebody cloned my information." He smirked. "Convenient story." Then the door opened. Hawk walked in, cane in one hand, file in the other. "It's not a story," he said. "It's a setup." He handed over the file's cybersecurity reports, proof the organization's database had been breached the night before the article dropped. "We traced the IP. Guess where it leads?" He turned to Sienna, his eyes dark. "Your old coworker from the diner, the one who filmed that first video at the gas station." Sienna's jaw fell open. "Linda?" Hawk nodded. "She was paid to sell footage to a media broker. When it went viral, she wanted more. When we didn't pay, she sold fake data instead." The detective looked uneasy. "We'll verify this." Hawk glared at him. "Do that fast." 2 hours later, they let Sienna go. The air outside smelled like freedom, but it didn't feel like it. Reporters swarmed again, shouting questions. She pushed past them, climbed into Hawk's truck, and slammed the door. "Why would she do that?" she whispered. Hawk sighed. "Money. Attention. Doesn't take much to turn truth into a weapon." That night, Sienna sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the dark window. "They almost destroyed me," she said softly. Hawk shook his head. "They tried, but they didn't understand something." "What?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "You can't bury the truth when it's standing up." The next morning, Hawk went live online with every document, every receipt, every trace of the hack. He called out the media for their lies and named Linda as the source. Within hours, the tide turned again. Apologies flooded in from reporters, donors, even neighbors. But Sienna didn't celebrate. The victory felt hollow. For every person who believed her now, there would be 10 more waiting to tear her down tomorrow. She realized the real fight wasn't for her name anymore, it was for the truth itself. And that fight, she knew, was just getting started. The morning after the press storm, the city felt different. For the first time in months, Sienna walked outside without lowering her head. The clouds that had loomed over her for so long finally cracked open, letting in a slice of light. News anchors who once called her a fraud now opened their broadcasts with the same words. New evidence clears Sienna Clark of all wrongdoing. The police department released a statement confirming that Linda Matthews, a former waitress, had fabricated documents for a payout from a tabloid media company. Sienna's name was cleared, but the damage to her job, her home, her peace couldn't be undone so easily. That morning, she and Maya moved into a temporary apartment provided by Lily's legacy. It wasn't much, 2 rooms, peeling wallpaper, a view of the city's skyline, but it was safe. Maya twirled in the living room, laughing. Mommy, can we stay here forever? Sienna smiled, though her voice caught. Not forever, baby. Just until the world calms down a little. Downstairs at the Lily's Legacy headquarters, Hawk was already at work, fielding phone calls from donors and lawyers. Cole walked in, waving a newspaper. We did it, he said, dropping the headline on the table. Hero Mom vindicated, scandal exposed as smear campaign. Hawk gave a small grin. Justice takes time, but it always finds its way. Then he looked at Sienna. You ready to get back to work? I never stopped, she said quietly. By that afternoon, they were on the road heading to a small town outside the city where the next project awaited. A cluster of half-collapsed houses stood at the end of a dirt road, homes destroyed by a fire the previous winter. Sienna climbed out of the truck, feeling the dry wind on her face. A woman in a tattered denim jacket met her at the gate. You're the lady from the news, ain't you? She asked cautiously. Sienna hesitated, unsure if it was friend or foe speaking. The woman smiled faintly. Thank you for what you did. My brother's alive because of your foundation. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work. Sienna organized fund drives, oversaw volunteers, and distributed supplies. Families who had once looked at her with suspicion now brought her water, hugs, and stories. One afternoon, as she was sorting clothes, a man approached her, a black veteran named Marcus, who had lost his home in the fire. When they burned my house, he said, nobody came, but then I heard about you. You made me believe people still care. He handed her a small wooden cross carved by hand. Keep this, he said, for strength. Yet even as the world seemed to tilt back toward justice, not everyone was ready to forgive. At a town hall meeting weeks later, a councilman stood up, his tone sharp. You may have been cleared legally, Miss Clark, but your actions brought chaos to our streets. Do you expect us to forget the damage? Sienna's jaw tightened. No, she said. I don't expect you to forget. I expect you to learn. The man frowned. Learn what? That fear destroys more than fire ever could. Fear made my neighbors call me dangerous. Fear made the world call me a liar. And fear will keep burning this town long after the flames are gone unless you choose to see people for who they are, not what they look like. The room fell silent. An old man in the back, the same one who had shouted her down weeks before, stood slowly. You're right, he said hoarsely. I judged you by headlines, not by heart. He extended his hand, and the gesture rippled through the crowd. Applause followed, hesitant at first, then growing. Later that night, Hawk found her sitting on the back steps of the community hall, staring at the horizon. You've changed this town? He said. No, she replied softly. I reminded them who they could be. He nodded. You've got a gift, Sienna, and it's time we used it for something bigger. He handed her a manila folder. Inside were blueprints, the design for a new community center, the Clark House for Justice and Renewal. She blinked, stunned. You can't name it after me. Hawk smiled. I can. Because this isn't just about what you did, it's about what you proved. That compassion doesn't need permission. Cole joined them, laughing. And besides, it sounds better than the Hawk Center. When construction began, the community rallied behind it. Volunteers painted walls, students planted flowers, and neighbors brought food for the workers. Even those who had once whispered behind her back showed up to help. The transformation was almost cinematic. The street that had once been divided now pulsed with unity. On opening day, children ran across the new playground, their laughter echoing through the crisp morning air. Sienna stood before the crowd, microphone in hand, Maya beside her holding the same wooden cross Marcus had given. A year ago, she began, I had $8 and a choice. I could walk away from someone in need or I could stop. That choice nearly cost me everything. But it gave me something far greater. The truth that the walls between us are thinner than we think. That we are all just one act of kindness away from redemption. Her voice caught on the last word. The audience rose to their feet. Hawk wiped a tear from his eye. Cole clapped so hard his hands reddened. And as the applause thundered through the newly built Clark House, Sienna knew she had finally reclaimed something the world could never take again, her dignity. That night, she tucked Maya into bed in their new home, kissed her forehead and whispered, See, baby, kindness doesn't lose. It just takes longer to win. But outside, beneath the glow of the streetlights, the SUV returned silent, idling in the shadows. Inside, two figures watched the house, their faces hidden. One of them spoke quietly. She's not done yet, and neither are we. The peace Sienna had fought so hard to build was real, but fragile, and the war for truth far from over. The night before the anniversary celebration, the city shimmered in golden light, but Sienna couldn't shake the unease prickling at the edge of her mind. She stood by the window of the Clark house, looking out at the crowd, setting up tents and banners for tomorrow's event. 1 year of kindness, the banner read, the words glowing softly against the dark sky. Inside, volunteers laughed, arranging tables, hanging photos of families Lily's legacy had helped. It should have been a night of peace, but something about the quiet outside felt wrong, too still, too heavy. Cole walked in holding a clipboard. Everything's set. Press arrives at 9, the mayor at 10. You should rest, Sienna. She smiled faintly. You know I won't. Hawk, sitting nearby with his cane across his lap, chuckled. You never rest. That's why this place exists. His voice softened. You know, Lily would have loved you. Sienna turned toward him, touched. She already changed my life, Hawk. I just carried her flame. But their moment was cut short when the power flickered once, twice, and went out. The building plunged into darkness. Outside, the sound of an engine idling echoed faintly. Cole tensed. That's not good. Hawk reached for his phone, its screen casting a dim blue light on his worried face. Generators are locked downstairs, he said. Cole, check it out. Cole nodded and disappeared into the hallway. Minutes passed. Then a crash. The shatter of glass. Sienna's breath caught. Cole? She called out. No answer. Hawk tried to stand, but his leg buckled. She grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the corridor. The beam caught something glinting on the floor, a cell phone. Cracked. Cole's name flashing on the screen. She barely had time to react before a voice came from behind her. Still playing the hero, huh? She spun around. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted by moonlight, was Detective Harris, the same officer who had interrogated her months ago. But his badge wasn't pinned to his chest this time. His expression was twisted, his eyes cold. You ruined a lot of people's careers, Miss Clark, he sneered. Made honest cops look corrupt, made the city look weak. What do you want? She asked, forcing calm into her shaking voice. He stepped closer. You should have stayed quiet. You think those people out there love you? They love the idea of you until the next scandal comes along. You humiliated powerful men, and they don't forgive. Behind him, another figure stepped out of the shadows, Linda Matthews. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. They said they'd pay me if I helped. Shut up, Harris snapped. Sienna took a slow step backward. You tried to burn my car. You've been watching my house. Harris smiled thinly. People like you don't learn unless they're scared. Before he could move again, headlights flared through the windows, dozens of them. The deep rumble of engines filled the night. Hawk's voice rose from behind her, strong despite his limp. You picked the wrong house. The bikers had arrived, 100 of them, the same thunderous army that had once terrified the neighborhood. They surrounded the Clark house, engines growling, lights piercing the darkness. Cole stumbled back into the room, blood on his lip but eyes blazing. Security cameras caught everything, he said. They're live streaming this right now. Harris turned pale. You're bluffing. Check the red light, Cole said, pointing to the camera in the corner. Its tiny LED blinked steadily. Hawk leaned on his cane. Go ahead, officer. Keep talking about how justice works for people like us. The detective hesitated. Then, in a flash of rage, he lunged for his gun. But before he could draw, a sharp voice rang out from the doorway. Drop it! Police sirens wailed outside. The real officers stormed in, guns raised. Harris froze, his weapon half drawn. Detective Harris, one officer barked, you're under arrest for conspiracy, intimidation, and obstruction of justice. As they cuffed him, Sienna turned to Linda, tears in her eyes. Why? She whispered. You had a choice, Linda sobbed. I thought they'd destroy me if I didn't help. I was wrong. Outside, as dawn broke, the police escorted Harris away. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed. Hawk placed a hand on Sienna's shoulder. You didn't just survive, he said quietly. You exposed everything rotten beneath the surface. By noon, the celebration still went on. The mayor gave his speech. The crowd cheered as the ribbon was cut, unveiling the plaque at the front of the Clark house. Built from courage, born from kindness. Sienna stepped up to the microphone. voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "A year ago, I thought kindness could fix everything," she began. "I was wrong. Kindness doesn't fix the world, it reveals it. It shows who's willing to help, who's willing to hurt, and who's willing to stay silent. Today, I'm done being silent." The applause was thunderous. In the crowd, faces of every color clapped together. Maya ran up, hugging her legs, her small voice barely audible over the noise. "You did it, Mommy." Sienna smiled through tears. "No, baby, we did it." That evening, as the sun dipped low, she stood outside, watching the sky fade to pink and gold. Cole joined her quietly. "You know, the world's watching you now," he said. "Every move, every word." She nodded. "Then I'd better make them count." For a moment, everything was still the calm after a storm that had raged for too long. And in that silence, Sienna finally understood what her grandmother meant all those years ago. Kindness costs nothing, but it changes everything. She looked at the glowing sign above the center, the crown with wings shining softly, and whispered, "This isn't the end, it's the beginning." And as the last light of day washed over the Clark house, the world for once seemed a little more ready to listen. The city slept under a warm orange sky, and the lights of the Clark house glowed like a heartbeat against the dark. The storm was over now, not because the world had suddenly become fair, but because one woman refused to let its cruelty define her. Sienna stood outside the gates long after the crowd had gone, watching the wind ripple through the banner that read, "Kindness over fear." It fluttered softly, like a whisper of everything she had lost, and everything she had built in its place. She thought back to the first night to the rain, the trembling hands, the 8 crumpled dollars she'd spent on a stranger the world told her to ignore. That moment, small and ordinary, had become the spark that lit a movement not born of anger, but of courage, not of perfection, but of humanity. Hawk's words echoed in her mind. You can't bury the truth when it's standing up. Now the truth had a home. The Clark house was more than walls and lights, it was proof. Proof that one act of kindness can ripple across streets, cities, hearts. Proof that even when hate screams louder, compassion finds a way to speak. Sienna looked down at Maya, asleep on a bench beside her, clutching her stuffed rabbit, the same one she held that night outside the gas station. Her little chest rose and fell with steady breaths, untouched by fear. That was what all of this had been for, so that one day, her daughter wouldn't have to grow up explaining why kindness needed defending. The street was quiet, save for the hum of the night wind and the distant purr of motorcycle engines fading into the hills. Somewhere out there, Hawk and his riders were on the road again, helping the next stranger, saving the next life, carrying the legacy that began with a woman who refused to walk away. Sienna smiled faintly. $8, she whispered. That's all it took to change everything. As she turned to leave, the camera lingered on the plaque at the entrance, in memory of every soul who chose compassion when the world chose fear. Then her voice, gentle and steady, carried over the music her final message to the world. If this story reaches you, don't just listen. Act. Help someone who needs it, even if it costs you something small, a moment, a meal, $1, because kindness doesn't belong to the rich, the powerful, or the fearless. It belongs to anyone brave enough to care. The piano swells softly as images fade in the families Lily's legacy helped, the rebuilt homes, the faces smiling through tears. The last shot returns to that gas station from a year ago, the same spot where it all began. The cracked pavement glistens under the streetlight. A small bronze plaque gleams beside the door. Here, a woman spent her last $8 to save a stranger and reminded the world that compassion has no color. The music fades into silence. Then, a single line appears on screen. Be someone's Sienna today.